If you're into nature photography and like to take photos of birds, insects, flowers, that sort of thing, don't overlook the Fujifilm 70-300 as a great alternative. Between its good reach at 300 and its excellent close focus, it'll do a surprisingly good job as an all-round nature lens. So let's take a look at its features. Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Photography, and today let's talk about the Fujifilm 70-300 f4-5.6 zoom lens as a good all-round nature lens, an affordable lens, a lot cheaper than the 100-400 and the 150-600. It gives us a full frame range of 105-450, and that's quite a good range for the types of nature photography we normally do. So I'm going to put up some examples of some of the photos I've done with this lens. I did virtually all of it with my XS10 camera, which is over my head right now. So I've got the XT3 on it. But we'll go over the general handling of the lens, some problems I ran into, and some really good things about the lens. So first, let's just talk about general handling. You can see that it zooms with a very short throw, but it has quite a long extension at 300, which isn't surprising. It's a 300mm lens. It's going to be long. That does have an impact on balance. So when you are trying to zoom in on something, you will notice that change. But when it's zoomed in, it is a relatively compact setup. So if we take the hood off, you'll see it's not a very big lens. So it's comfortable to carry around. I usually had just a wrist strap with the XS10, and I just carried it in this fashion with the wrist strap, and that's how I used it all day. It was quite comfortable. It's not a heavy lens for its length, so it's not going to wear you out. If you have a neck strap, it's not going to be that bad on you. As far as the actual photography was concerned, I found it had an excellent close focus for a long zoom. I've never run into a 70-300 before that can focus as closely as this one. So it was very useful for insects, for birds, small flowers, whatever you wanted to do in a walk through your local woods. It's going to be able to deliver it for you, and you can pull back out to 70 to get a wider shot if you need it. But most of the time I was shooting at 300. There was a few exceptions where I drop back into the 70 range or the 150 range. But other than that, it was a very easy lens to use. Okay, let's take a look at some of the controls on this lens. Now you do have this lock feature that works at 70. And you put the lock on, and what that does is it prevents zoom creep. So when you're walking around, the camera is hanging down like this, the zoom won't creep on you. As soon as you start to zoom, the lock comes off. So you don't have to take it off. You don't have to remember to take it off. Over here we have a range limiter. Either you can use it at full or at 5 meters to infinity. And you have your aperture control, automatic or manual. You have the aperture ring, but as you can see, there are no markings on the ring because it's variable aperture. Usually Fujifilm does not put markings on their aperture rings when it's a variable aperture zoom. And this one, as I said, is for f4-5.6. Now, as far as the handling in autofocus is concerned, when I was out shooting insects, I did run into some problems. Generally, the accuracy of the autofocus is quite good. It snapped in very quickly. I was quite happy with the autofocus speed. But what I did get happening to me is the autofocus would seem to lock at a certain point and wouldn't shift off of it. So, for example, if I shot a picture of an insect and then moved to a second one, the autofocus didn't do anything. And what I found I had to do was point the camera at some distant object, and then the autofocus would suddenly wake up, and then I was fine. Now, I don't know if this was a factor of something to do with the combination of this lens and the XS10, or it was an XS10 problem, but it happened once in a while. And as I say, I just had to point it at a distant subject and come back to the original subject, and I was fine. But it was a bit of a nuisance that kept happening. But other than that, the autofocus was both quick, quiet, and it snapped in very quickly. And I could work close without it going zum, 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 which is very nice. If you've ever used an older, slower autofocus zoom and you're trying to close focus with it, you know how badly they can hunt. And this one doesn't hunt, which is very, very nice. Some of the other things I was going to say about it is that I found it to be quite sharp. Now, I don't get into MTF curves and all that stuff in these discussions, but I had no qualms about sharpness at all. Everything came out great. In terms of the optical image stabilization, I didn't go really slow. I think 1/60th was about the slowest I went. No problems with shake. So I think you can probably get down a lot lower than 1/60th, probably 1/30th, maybe even cheating at 1/15th and get away with it. So the OS is excellent. I had no issues with that whatsoever. You'll notice there is no OS switch on the camera body itself. The OS switch is in the lens menu. Sorry, in the camera menu, I meant to say. So if you want to turn it on or off, you have to go into the menu system. And if you're going to use this lens a lot on a particular camera body, you can set that up in My Menu, so that option is there available for you right away. Because if you're going to be flipping between handheld and use on a tripod, then you want to be able to turn that on and off quite quickly. But if you're going to be using like I do, which is mostly either handheld or on a monopod, then I would leave the OIS on all of the time. Other than that, I can't say anything really negative about the lens except for that odd problem with the autofocus. It is affordable compared to a lot of other zooms out there. Its performance is excellent. And as I say, it's a good substitute for not spending a lot of money on the 100 to 400 or the 150 to 600. Obviously, you have to do a lot of cropping sometimes, and you'll see in these bird photos, I will have mentioned the ones that are really cropped in on. But nevertheless, with the XS10 sensor, great image, even though I'm heavily cropped. And now with the new XT5 and the XH2 versions with their 40 megapixel sensors, you're going to have all the room in the world to crop if you're using those cameras. Even with this XT3, I mean, the sensor on this is excellent. I don't have to worry about cropping in too much. So yeah, if you're going to do bird photography with it, you probably will have to do some cropping. But, we can get away with that with our modern sensors. And, as I say, that is the one compromise, that you're not spending a ton of money on the 150 to 600. It is an affordable option for you, and it'll do the job quite efficiently. So if you're looking for a nice nature lens that's going to let you do birds, wildlife, larger insects, flowers, that sort of thing, with good close focus, good working speed, I think this 100 or 300 is going to fit a lot of the bill for you. So check it out. Cheers.